I know January isn't the time where most of us aren't really thinking about high school football, but coming out here and thinking about it during January for even just for an hour a week is pretty big. So thank you for committing to that. It's one way to really get better and help out. So with that, I will share my screen. That looks good there. So tonight we're going to talk about officials and communication. If at any point during the presentation you've got a question, go ahead, just type it in the chat box. Rodney's going to be kind of monitoring it, and there's certain little breaks where I'll ask Rodney if there's any questions, and we can go over them at that point. So, let's see. So first, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Geoff Dieringer. I'm the secretary and the crew chief for the Northern Nevada Football Officials Association. I've been officiating high school football since 2012. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be elected as the secretary in February 2019. And then I was elected as crew chief for the first time in the fall of 2019. And then I was just reelected in the 2022 season for the next 2 years. Very proud of those. So always thankful to the association for that honor. I'm also a member of the Community College Football Officials Association. Since 2018, we covered the Northern California Community College football. And then I'm also a graduate student getting my Master's of Social Work. I'll be completing that in August of 2024. That's actually really helped me a lot with communication and kind of figuring out how to talk to people when they've got high emotions or kind of in crisis. I'll kind of go over that in a little bit, kind of making some analogies. If anybody needs it, I can email this presentation out. We're going to try to get it on YouTube, but if you want a copy of it, I'm more than happy to share it. There's my email that I use for the NNFOA. It's just secretary.nnfoa@gmail.com. So getting into it, so who do we communicate with? When you think about it, officiating, it's just all about communication. So we communicate with each other as a crew. A lot of times when we kind of prepare our communication, it's just, hey, let's just have good communication out there. But we don't really go too deep into it. So that's why I wanted to kind of get this out there, kind of get you thinking more and try to figure out how to have that good communication that we say that we want to have. Then the other people we talk with and communicate with, players, coaches, game side administration, whether that's the person that lets you in the door, whoever's game security, anything like that. Auxiliary crews, be our chain crews or ball people, anybody that's helping out the teams but aren't directly a team member. And then TV, whether that's just the referee announcing to the cameras. But if you're working a TV game, how many of you go and talk to the production van beforehand? It's something that I started doing pretty early on with our Friday night games, and having just that little communication beforehand can give you a big benefit of knowing how many TV timeouts they want to do, how long they're going to be. It really helps prepare you for what's going to happen during the game. And then also the fans, we're communicating to them, whether it's our announcements or our body language, something like that, whether they're in the stadium or if they're watching on TV. It's the fans, that's kind of who we're putting the game on for. So big part of who we're communicating with. And then there's one more group that we communicate with. We'll get into that later. We've got kind of an extensive list there, but I want you to kind of think about who that other group could be. I know a couple other people on the call have seen this, so no cheating from you guys. That's not fair, so we'll let the other ones think about it. But we'll get into that later on. So kind of goals of communication, these are going to be kind of a running theme you're going to notice as we go through the presentation. You want to have clear communication. You want it to be concise, understandable, and efficient. if any of those start to break down, it's going to affect the other ones. If your communication, if they can't understand you, then it's not clear. They're going to have to ask you to repeat. It's not going to be efficient. If it's not concise, then again, it's not going to be efficient, may not be understandable. And so all these kind of work together. And so you want to kind of base your communication off of these 4 goals. They're not the only goals out there, but they're the ones that I found that kind of help me narrow everything, and everything fits into those categories. Kind of some basics of communication. So first we've got verbal communication, and this is what you say and how you say it. What goes into it is your tone, how you project out. If you don't have a stadium microphone and you can't project out, it's going to be hard for the crowd to hear you. But if you can project out, it makes a big difference, even in a freshman game. If they can hear the fouls being announced, they're going to understand more about what's going on in the game. More enjoyable experience for them, lets them know what's going on. And then your formality, if you're being very formal with somebody, or if it's just when we're in the locker room before or after the game, we're very informal, just talking. Sometimes we use jargon, depending on who we're talking to. If you talk to an official, yeah, you can use rule book speak, basically. But if you're talking to a fan, they're really not going to understand that kind of jargon. And then the other type of communication is nonverbal. And this is actually the majority of your communication, whether you're intending to or not, just the way you walk. If you're down kind of moping, you may not be thinking about it, but you're putting off that kind of look that is either sad or not interested, something like that. And so you really want to be aware of it and try to acknowledge it and try to put out your best self. If you look confident, people are going to see that and they're going to think that you're confident. Just looking at our white hat here, he's doing nonverbal communication. Yeah, he's probably making a verbal announcement, but just in this picture, as officials, we can read what he's doing, and we all know that he's making a targeting call. But some of the unintentional nonverbal communication that he's doing, he looks very fit. He's taking care of himself. His uniform looks tailored. He puts a lot of effort into it. That's somebody that you look at and it's okay, he's already got some credibility because of how he looks. And that's all of his nonverbal communication. And then something that people think, oh, when the game kicks off, that's when we start our communication, but definitely not with your nonverbals. When you arrive to the game site, that's when you start being seen. Even if before you get there, if you're road raging while you're getting there and somebody sees you go and then they recognize you on the field, they've already seen that part of you. So you really want to be cognizant of it, that it starts even before you arrive to the game and then it ends when you leave. That whole time you're being watched, you're giving out that communication. Then kind of more basics, just how we communicate. This is very much determined by who we're communicating with. We're going to go in depth on how we communicate with each other and officials versus coaches. Very different. We're trying to do the same goals, but it's going to be very different. And how we communicate, that's going to determine our effectiveness. All right. So first, just want to check, are there any questions in there, Rodney, yet?
No questions, Geoff. The only thing I see in there, Elko wanted to shout out. They're on here tonight too, guys. Thanks for.
I saw Tyler McCabe, so good to see him on there, and Gerald. All right, so one of the things that I've really learned and kind of leaned into in the past couple of years is understanding roles. And what I mean by that is, yeah, we're all part of the game, but we're very different. And if you can understand the difference in roles, it can help you communicate a little bit more. And so the role of an official is very different than every other group that is a part of the game. Officials, we want three basic things from the game. We want it played safely, fairly, and within the confines of the rules. And yeah, we always want a competitive game, a close game, something that keeps us really engaged. I'm sure the national championship game crew, they wanted a game that was much closer, but they don't have control of that. We don't care who wins, who loses, the final score. We want those three things safely, fairly, within the confines of the rules. Every other group that we work with, they have a vested interest in their team. Coaches, they want to win. Yeah, they want the games played safely. They want their players to be safe and healthy. Fairly, yeah, they want it fair and consistent. But if they happen to get a call that might be bad, but it goes in their favor, they're not going to refuse that. I've never had a coach come up to me and say, actually, Geoff, I don't think that was pass interference. You guys can take that one away. They're going to take that one. And then players, obviously, they want their team to win. Fans, parents, same thing. They want their kids to win, have that experience. And then you look at TV, you think, oh, they're not going to have any kind of vested interest. They're looking at ratings. They want a production quality. They want something coming in that they're going to be able to put on TV that looks good. And so if you can put out and you can communicate well, that's going to give them that show that they want. And it's not just our one TV game a week now where you turn on Friday Night Rivals and that's the only game on. Ever since COVID, I know in Nevada, they gave out streaming devices to all the high schools so that they could stream all their games when they couldn't have fans. And there's been plenty of times where I've done a freshman or JV game. I've gone up to the clock operator to talk to them before the game, and there's the person setting up the streaming site. And so you want to assume that you're always on TV, you're always streaming, assume you're being watched because you probably are, and you never know who's going to be watching. There could be somebody that sees you and says, hey, that person, I can pick them up, move them up a level, or get a shout out on the TV game, something like that. Just assume that you're always on TV, you're always being watched. All right, so diving into it, communicating with officials. This is something, like I said before, we always talk about. We want that good communication, but what actually goes into it? So we want clear communication. We want it to be efficient. If you get somebody that's talking to you and they're just kind of rambling on and it's taking a while. We all have that little kind of clock going in our head of, okay, we need to get going. We watch it on TV and you kind of get that feeling of, what are they talking about now? What's going on? So you want it to be efficient. You want it to be needed information. If I'm asking if there's a foul or where the spot is, and I don't get it until halftime or after the game, that's not when I need the information. I need it beforehand. I need it when I'm asking it. And then useful information. This might be one of the biggest ones. I need useful information because I need to be able to take action with information. If I'm talking to Ronnie, if he's my umpire, I'm line of scrimmage, and I tell him, hey, Ronnie, the line's all wonky. He might say, okay, now he's going to have to ask, well, which line, offense or defense? Are they too far up, too far back? What's going on? I didn't give him clear information. It's not efficient because now he's having to ask me questions. It's not useful. He can't take action. So if I say, hey, Ronnie, the right side of the offensive line, they need to move up. That's clear, efficient. He can take that information. It's useful. He can take action and talk to him. And then you don't want to have an ego when you're out on the field or you're communicating with your fellow officials. One of my favorite bands from Reno, a band called Paul Silent, they have a line in one of their songs that says, no one is better than me. I'm no better than anyone else. And I've always kind of looked at it as you want to have that confidence that you can do anything. And in the officiating sense, that you can work the biggest game, make the biggest call at the biggest moment. But at that same time, be humble enough to understand that, hey, if somebody comes in and gives me information that is different than what I'm thinking, be able to say, okay, yeah, you had a better angle. We're going to pick up that foul or something like that. Just be able to let that ego go, and that you don't always have to be right. And then when we're communicating with officials, it's very situational. When I'm reporting a foul, if Mark's my white hat and I come up to him, I report a foul, it's going to be very different than if I'm giving him information. If it's a foul, it might be 10 words, 10, 15, 20 at the most. I can come up to him and say, Mark, I've got holding, offense, number 57, my flag is good. And that's about 10 words right there. And so that's clear, efficient, needed, all useful. He's got everything he needs to know to go and do his announcement. But if I'm giving him information, say if I'm trying to tell my sideline partner that a player is getting out of control, it's going to be a little bit more. And I can say, hey, can you tell the coaches that number 14 is starting to get a little wild? He's using bad language. I've warned him twice already. A little bit longer of a dialogue, but I'm still giving them clear information of what's going on. It's useful. They can go and tell the coach. And now that coach has useful information. They can pull that kid out, try to keep them from getting a 15-yard penalty. And then now we've got O2Os, or official to official radios. We've had them for about, I think, 6 years now in the NNFOA. Kind of a big change for it. And so you kind of run into this when you use radios versus when you use face-to-face communication. We come up and actually talk to somebody. And this is one where you get to really kind of play with it, both with yourself and with your crew, because it can be different between levels and crewmates. I don't like using them for freshman and junior varsity games because most of the time we've got one or two newer officials on there, and I want them to be able to come and talk to me face to face, primarily because it helps slow them down. They have that time to come over to talk to me, collect their thoughts, and kind of calm down, and then give me their information to help it be more clear and more efficient.
Geoff, if I can tell a good example of that, by the way, between officials, I was in a game and I called a good catch, and on the radio, the umpire said, "No, I saw it hit the ground first." He was telling me why he was picking up my flag, and that means we were all on the same page at that point. But it was a good way to do it, and it doesn't embarrass me in front of the fans and stuff.
Yep. Yeah. And so we want to have that good communication, acknowledging different levels, different ability levels, and then also being comfortable with who you've got on the field. Because I've worked with Rodney for 2 years now. I can make it real clear and simple just on the radio, boom, boom. Stop just real quick, let them know, and we can go. Another good example, you want it to be efficient, don't want it to take a long time. If we've got a 70-yard attempted pass and I'm the back judge and I've got a defensive pass interference, it's going to take me a long time to get done, run to the white hat, tell them what I've got, then I've got to go back, get my flag. It's going to take a while. I can look at Mark, I can give him a signal, and then just get on the radio and say 27. And now he knows all that information. It's going to be pass interference, defense, number 27. And so being able to acknowledge who I've got on the field with me, how comfortable I am, did we pregame how we're going to communicate these types of things, that's going to really help figure out if you want to do radio or face-to-face. And then something that has come up a few times that I've experienced, and it's one that you don't think about until you're in the moment and then you wish you had thought about it. It's how to explain a situation when something weird happens. And say you're standing back there and you've got a ball in the end zone, you don't know what, you know how, or that it got in the end zone and then it's out the back, but you're trying to figure out, do I have a touchback? Do I have a safety? What do I got? First thing, kill that clock. You're not making a ruling. You're just saying, hey, play's done. And then look and bring in your fellow officials and tell them what you've got. But how you tell them is going to be very different and kind of affect how they're going to be able to communicate back to you. If they don't know what's going on, if they did not see the play, when you give that information to them, you kind of want to make it like a test question. You want to give them clear terms and actions. You want to say, the quarterback muffed the snap, it rolled into the end zone, the defender tried to recover it, but it bounced off his helmet and out the end zone. And then let them figure out the answer. You don't want to give them your answer because it might be wrong. If you give them that information, say, so I've got a touchback, right? Now they've got touchback in their head, and it's going to take a little bit for them to try to get that answer out, and it might soil their thought. So you want to give them just the clear terms and actions, and then just wait for it. Or what you can do, it might be, I've got part of the play, another official's got another part of it, come together and say, I saw XYZ. And then they can come in and say, I saw ABC. And you put those together, now you've got the full picture, and then you can make your determination, make your ruling. So big thing, kill that clock, take your time, slow down, you don't want to rush it, and then just get that information out there. So before we move on to coaches, do we got anything in the chat, Rodney?
Yeah, we got one comment from Doug Soul, just kind of making everyone aware, which is a good comment. You know, everyone nowadays have cell phones, puts everything on YouTube, Huddle, social media. So, you know, keep that in the back of your mind.
Yep.
And then Steve Rower has a question. In O2O communications, how do we verify our communication was received? What if the other official's battery died? What if ours died? What if the earpiece falls out, you know?
Yeah, so those kind of things, it's part of it is you want to pregame that. Pregame is very important. It shouldn't just be kind of story hour of, oh, I saw this goofy thing, I saw this goofy thing. Go over situations. Go over, hey, if my battery dies, at some point, I'm gonna tell you somebody that has a full radio and be able to tell the rest of the crew so that we know. For verifying that that they received the information, a lot of that is going to be in the reply. If you don't get a reply, try to make that eye-to-eye contact, see if they're paying attention. They may be talking to a coach or a player, and they may not be able to respond. And if that's what's happening, don't try to keep asking the question because now you're trying to divide their attention. So just wait. Okay, now you see it, get on it again. If they don't, then you've got to try to, at some kind of break in the action, go in, talk to them, let them know what's going on.
And then, hold on, most people talk. It's more, we had one from our buddy Andrew Schmitz, kind of piggybacking on Steve's, like, he has a good point. So if one O2O dies, do you guys make a decision to whole crew just shut the radios off and go old school? Or, you know, I guess that goes back to what you said, Geoff, you know, that's something you probably pregame.
Yeah, I'd say pregame it. I know for our college association, if nobody has it, or if one person doesn't have it, then we act like nobody has it, and then we just go to just traditional face-to-face or hand signals. Yeah, so that's something that you really wanted to kind of pregame. I would say error on the side of if one person loses it, then nobody uses it, because then you're kind of keeping one person out of the conversation, and that can kind of cause a little bit of trouble if you do that.
Yeah. And then Steve had another, when should we always go face to face instead of rely on O2Os? I'm thinking, you know, he's thinking intentional grounding type situations where, you know, you do have to come together and make a decision.
Yeah, yeah, those ones, I'd say kind of those certain fouls that it's kind of a two-parter where the referee has part of it and then line of scrimmage has part or the back judge, whatever. In those kind of ones, you definitely want to come up face to face to just kind of verify, and it just looks good for the crowd that, hey, we're coming together. People kind of expect that late flag for intentional grounding. And then if it's a more complicated situation, definitely if there's any unsportsmanlike penalty, you're definitely coming face to face. You're not just gonna go, oh yeah, I've got a UNS and that's it. You want to come in, have that conversation. Targeting would definitely be one where you want to have that conversation. High school rules a little different, doesn't include a automatic ejection, but it's definitely a big enough penalty where you want to have that face-to-face communication.
And then, yeah, we've just had a couple of people putting in comments along the same lines, like McCabe, he mentioned, you know, talk slow, clear on the radio, not fast. And
Yeah.
then Trent kicked in the face-to-faces, you know, same line, targeting, DQs, unsportsmanlike, anything like that.
Yeah. If
No
you've got
more
any, if you've got any foul where you kind of go, all right, here we go. That should kind of be your cue of, I need to be face to face with somebody on this one.
Yeah. Oh shit.
Yeah. All right. So communicating with coaches. This is an area that kind of I thought I was decent at. And then once I started doing more 7 official mechanics where I'm a deep flank and that's my job as being the communicator with the coach, I realized I was not as strong as I thought I was. And so I've kind of taken it as a personal goal to really be the best communicator that I can be. And so really just trying hard. I've got some tips and tricks I'll tell you guys. But kind of some basic principles. Again, you want to be clear. This is where the difference comes with an official versus a coach. An official, we can use rule speak. For coaches, you don't want to use rule speak because that's not how they think. They're not in the rule book as much as we are because that's not their role. If a coach came to me and talked like he was drawing up a play, I'm not going to understand what he's saying, just as he's not going to understand if I start quoting the rule book to him. And so you want to try to use just plain regular football talk with them. That's what's going to be clear. And then professional. This is huge. You want to have that professionalism because we are not friends with them. We are partners in this game. Without them, without us, without players, the game's not going to happen. And if you try to be too buddy-buddy with them, friends ask for favors. They expect favors to happen. And so if you start treating them like friends, they're going to want that favor. And you don't want to cross that line of professionalism because also the other sideline, they're going to see that. They're going to wonder, why is he yucking it up with them? They're going to start questioning calls. If they see you just laughing all the time, it's going to put a real bad kind of image in their mind. And then you want to be neutral at all times, both in just how you talk with your tone, your terms. We are not baseball umpires. We're not basketball referees. They show a lot more emotion, especially if a coach is arguing something. How often in baseball do you see where they're just bill to bill and they're just going at it? Just both sides are yelling. You never see that in football. How many times do we see a college football coach or an NFL coach just absolutely tearing into an official and they're just standing there and okay, just nod their head, okay, or they're just watching the play as they're just yelling. So we're not those emotional ones. We're the calm, steady state. And then we all have them. Those emotional satellite flags where you want to show the entire world that you had that unsportsmanlike foul. I know NASA is tracking a couple of my flags still. I know exactly when I had my last one in the spring season of the COVID year. I felt bad about it. It's a bad look. I apologize to the coaches afterwards because it shows that we're losing control. We're supposed to be the ones that are in control the whole game and not have that rise and fall of the emotions. And when we have those big emotional flags where we just toss it up as high as we can, it's a bad look. Again, that goes back to your nonverbal communication of, hey, that guy's kind of losing it. Yeah, you can have a little bit of a higher toss, but you don't want to get that boom, throw it super high and your face shows it. Not a very good look. And then you want to be respectful. When I was brought into community college football, Brian Brown, who's now the Pac-12 replay, he was our area representative. And the first meeting, one of the first things that he told me, and he was putting it towards college football, but now you put it towards high school too, is you never say to a coach that it's just a game, because to them, it's not. It's their livelihood. Even at the high school level, coaches move. They move their families for their job. This is their job. It's their livelihood. And so it's not just a game to them. It's something that's important. It's something that sustains them and provides for them. And so if you say, oh, it's just a game, that's taking away what they put into it, because guarantee every single coach on that field puts in more time than we are. We may put in a lot. They're living and breathing that stuff. And then consistency. At the clinic, the NNFOA clinic, we had 2 high school coaches there. And the basic theme of their presentations, even though they didn't intend it to be, was they just want consistency, and especially in communication, whether it's play to play, series to series, half to half, because now we switch sides at halftime. So what I'm telling one team in the first half, I should be telling the other team in the second half. And same thing, my sideline partner, they should be saying the same thing to my team when they come over. And then week to week, we're a different association. We've got 70 officials. That's a lot of different personalities, different interpretations of stuff. We want to make sure that we're consistent enough as an association and as an advocation of here's what's going on, so that they're able to coach their players to do what is expected, so that one week it's not a foul, then the next week it is a foul. That's going to mess it up. That's going to make it very difficult for them. And then coaches continued. So this is kind of some of my little tips and tricks. I like hearing versus listening. And it's something I figured out probably about 2 or 3 years ago, because I always thought I had to respond to everything. I wanted to make sure they knew what I was thinking and why, and get them on my side. But as I kind of realized the difference in roles, they didn't care. They just want the call their way. And so sometimes they're just going to yell. And at those times, I just need to hear it, but I don't have to listen to it. And so hearing, if I hear a coach just yelling, holding on every play, yeah, I hear it, but I'm not doing anything with that information. But if a coach comes to me and says, hey, can you watch number 72 holding on the sweeps? My antenna should go up. That's something that, hey, he's giving me useful information. Just as I want useful information from an official, he's giving me useful information that I can look for, I can do something with. And so when I have something that I want to listen to, I want to demonstrate that I'm listening. It can be something simple like just a verbal response of, yes, coach. Okay, coach, I'll look for it. Something like that. A lot of times when I'm on the sideline, I can't turn my head and look at them because I've got to be focused on the play. It might be, the snap might be imminent, something like that. And so kind of like what our line judge is doing here, kind of just give that little lean, little head nod, something like that. Lets them know that they're being heard and that you're listening to them. And then the biggest thing you need to do is have action. You need to do something with it. They give you useful information, have that action. If you have a sweep and you can watch that number 72, You might have a foul, you might not. Whether you make the call or not, respond to the coach. If you didn't make the call, you can say, hey, coach, I saw it. You just overpowered your player. Or before there's a real restriction, your player gave up and just threw his arms up. And so you want to make sure that you give them that response. And then if you do have a holding, acknowledge that they helped you get that one. Like, coach, I definitely saw it that time. They're going to recognize that. They're going to see it. And it builds that credibility and it builds a rapport with them. And then next, kind of from what I've learned through my studies, is being empathetic and reflecting their feelings. Coaches are highly emotional. Football's an emotional game. There's ups and downs, and a coach, they could almost kind of be in a crisis. And what really helps somebody in a crisis is being able to reflect to them and showing that you understand what's going on. You don't have to try to kind of be, okay, I'm sorry, coach. Just reflect like, coach, I hear you. I hear you. I understand that you're upset, and then explain the situation or do whatever. They want to be heard. They want you to be listening to them. Reflect, let them know that you hear it. If they kind of go on a tirade and are just listing off all these things that is going wrong, paraphrase, summarize it. Like, okay, coach, I hear you. You want us to watch for the holding on the left side of the line, and you want us to be watching the defensive pass interference. I hear you, coach. I'll communicate with the crew, let them know to watch for those things. Now you're listening to them. They got it off their chest, and now they can move forward. And then putting it in favorable terms. How you give information to a coach is going to change how they're going to receive it. I had a game, it was my last game of the season, and we had a touchdown. I was the deep flank. Everything's kind of settling down. I'm starting to move to the goalpost for the PAT. And I see that there's an opposing team player near the home team bench, and he was given kind of jawing a little bit with the bench. And the coaches stepped in, the player left. They were yelling at the line judge of, hey, like, gotta do something. We get the PAT over. My line judge says, oh, I'm gonna go tell him that if his players just keep jawing, I'm just gonna throw the flag. I said, hold on. I'm gonna go by him anyways. Let me talk to him. That's my job. I kind of own that role of I gotta go talk to that coach. And so I went up. But well, first what I did was, because since I had seen the action, I got on my O2O to relay to my sideline partner, said, hey, can you let the coaches over there know number 14 was John with the sideline? I'm talking to my side, if you can have them talk to him. Said, okay, clear, consistent communication. Got that over with. And then I went over to my coach. I said, coach, I saw the player jawing. I've already discussed it with my crew. They're going to handle it on that side. And so he knew that we saw it, we're addressing it. And then I asked him, I said, can you talk to your players? Because I don't want them to get baited into getting a foul. So instead of making his players seem like the bad guy, is, hey, I'm trying to protect your players. I don't want them to get affected from the other team. Put it in a favorable term to not get that penalty. And it built a rapport right away, because 2 series before, we had 2 penalties against him. I went up to give him the penalty information, what was going on. And as I was walking up, I was about 5 yards away from him. He said, I don't want to hear it. It's all bullshit anyways. I don't care. And so he was kind of rough towards me. But when I went and told him, hey, I don't want your players to get baited into anything, it was boom. I was on his side. I was helping his team not get in trouble, and I had no problems from the sideline the rest of the game. Really made it happy. And then kind of on the flip side of that is sometimes you just have to take it. We've had those moments where we know we were wrong or that we missed something. There's nothing worse than when you hear a hit and you look over and the player's on the ground and nobody saw it, and the coaches go nuts and you know you missed it. And that coach has every right to be upset. And what they can do is they can call that timeout. And in that moment, you just have to take it. Rodney and I were on a game and we had kind of a big pivotal play that just through angles, we didn't work it exactly right. We missed it. We didn't see the action that was important, and the coach was very upset. And he called a timeout. He wanted to talk to us. And I said, okay, called the timeout, went over to him, and he got a minute. Rodney made sure that he was time of the timeouts. He made sure that he only got a minute. But sometimes you gotta let that coach just give it to you. I mean, it's for the players, it's for the fans to show that he's sticking up for his team. He's fighting hard. He got that minute. We were done. We went, and then we moved on. And game was a little bit better after that. Still high emotion, but sometimes we put those stripes on. Just understand that, yeah, we're going to get yelled at, and it's okay to get yelled at. All right. And so after coaches, any questions there, Rodney?
Yeah, so, well, we got some questions, some comments. So first of all, we got a couple of guys mentioning with O2Os, like some crews bring extra batteries out to the field, give their auxiliary guys an extra radio just in case. In the East, they do a lot of pre-snap stuff where like on kicking a field goal, they mention no clock. Hold on here. Sorry. No whistle, clock killer, stuff like that. And then Jerry Springer asked if you would mention the discussion that you guys had at SASA on the targeting call.
Oh, you're making me go back far in my memory, Jerry. So trying to remember the foul.
I'll fix you up. Remember, it was the play where I threw the flag on targeting on the two guys, and you came in and said, "No, Jerry, you didn't see it that way." And then Mark came in. That was effective communication. So I think it's a great example that you could use how we work that thing out. That's all.
Yeah. So that was one where we had a change of possession, and there was a long return, and so in that I was kind of cleaning up the backside, and I'm watching, and I saw this action. I saw kind of two players kind of look at each other, and it was kind of one of those that they just looked at each other and said, "Yeah, we're going to hit each other." They're far away from the play, but two opposing players, yeah, boom, go together. One of them fell down. So Jerry, he caught the hit and the player going down, and so he had the flag. The play gets over. I knew what Jerry called. I went up to him. I gave him my information, and I just said, I had this part of the puzzle. I know you have this part, but this is the part of the puzzle that I have. And from that, we picked up the flag, and it ended up being one that there's some disagreement. Should we have? Should we not have? But once we kind of put everything together, it's like, okay, yeah, that was the right call. It was a mutual hit. It was a big nothing. But yeah, so that was definitely one where when you have the two pieces of the puzzle come in, be able to accept that, hey, maybe somebody else saw something different, put it together, what makes the most sense, come to a decision. Yeah.
All right,
Jeff, Rodney?
Yeah, we got a couple more. Hold on, buddy. So first, Jake and Andrew both kind of mentioned in the chat, which is a good point. We got to always remember how much time the coaches put in. It's always like 100 times more than ours. And when we step out there on a Friday night, we take the power that they've had the whole week and confine them to 60 yards by 2, so something to keep in mind. And then Jake had a question. How do you handle the coach who just wants everything? He doesn't warn a flag, but just continues to whine about all the calls.
So that's kind of where you got to kind of use that hearing versus listening. If he's just constantly yelling for the holding, you don't really have to listen to it. If they keep coming up and it's every play that there's something else, you can try to make comments to it if you're able to. If you don't have that information, try to get that info. If it's away from you or not an area where you're not looking, you shouldn't be looking, maybe ask the referee, hey, did you see something here? They're asking. But they don't get to ask on every single play. And one of the terms I've heard in the last about year and a half is you don't have to respond to statements, because a coach may be just going off and you think that you need to reply, but they may just be making a bunch of statements. And in that moment, you just let it go, focus on yourself, focus on the game and your responsibilities, because that might just be how the coach is. And they may think that you're not listening to them, but if it's just statements, you don't have to respond to it. It's tough. There's some coaches that it seems like you can't win with, but in the end, make sure you're just focusing on your goal or your job and your responsibility. And that's gonna kind of help through that. It's hard. It's not a definitive answer, but do as much as you can, but don't let it take you out of your game, basically.
And Scott Senior mentioned that his best philosophy: respond to coaches' questions, not their statements.
Mm-hmm.
But then Steve Rower had a real good thing here that he says he learned this from Wade Walker. Coach white hat communication. Take a minute at halftime to go to each head coach and ask if he has anything for me or the crew. 98% of the time they say no, all's good, but they appreciate the effort.
Yeah.
It's also a good time as a white hat if you have UNSs or something big like that. Maybe you mention that to the coach, he says, you know, and I started doing that. I noticed in my lower level games, and it makes them feel that you have a little bit of investment into the game.
Yep. Yeah. And it's something that's another big one where if you go out and seek that information from them, they're being heard. You're listening to them, and it makes them feel like what they're saying to you matters. And so it's something that just builds rapport. I've had it where it kind of bites me in the butt where they just start complaining. But you know what? I'll take that one time versus the 50 times where it's a good thing. I want to have more communication than what's necessary. So I'd always do a little bit more than thinking, oh, he's just going to be mad, so I'm not going to talk to him. That's not going to be productive. And you can mitigate that a little bit. I've had it where if we had a discussion where they're upset about something, I'll acknowledge that. I'll say, all right, coach, besides the defensive pass interference call, do you have anything else for us? So I've already acknowledged it. He doesn't have to argue that one anymore. And he's like, oh yeah, he did remember that one. Okay. Yeah, no, there's nothing else. Okay. And then we move on.
And that's all there is at this point, Geoff.
All right, cool. So kind of moving on, kind of one of the biggest principles that I go by and I learned and was taught very early on. Eric Perez is my first crew chief. He kind of instilled this in me, is honesty. You never bluff or lie to a coach, player, or crewmate. If you do that, Murphy's Law, they're going to find out that you're wrong, especially if you're a newer official. You can't hide that you don't know stuff. So they're going to know when you're bluffing or lying, and that's going to take away all your credibility immediately. You don't want to lose that credibility because it's very difficult to come back from and to get. And so if you lie, that's just going to put you in a hole. And then along that same line, it's okay to not know. Get the information, report back. There's been plenty of times where I didn't know an answer to a question that a coach had. I go to my white hat or the umpire, whoever. I get that information. I come back, say, coach, I've got an answer to that question. Do you want it? Because they may have moved on. But I'm coming back. I'm giving the information if they want it. And that builds that rapport. Oh man, that guy made the effort to go get it. and it just kind of gives you a little bonus points for them. And then again, going back to the egos, it's okay to be wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times on the field, and it's okay. It's how you respond to it. And we'll go over that in a little bit, but it's how you respond to it, and just don't have that ego. I'll tell a story with Bob Boyd. Is my first season as a crew chief. Is the spring season for COVID, and Bob Boyd and I were on a game at Minogue. He threw a defensive pass interference. I took him off of it. I had something else that it didn't look like it. I came in, I told him, Bob said, okay. He trusted me, took me off of it. We get the game film, and Bob was right. He had the angle, what he saw was fully it. He trusted me, and what I saw was wrong. And I saw that, and my immediate email was to Bob, hey, you were right. I should have trusted you on that one. You were right. I was wrong in what I saw. And if you're able to admit that, you're going to be able to get better and kind of acknowledge where you're wrong. All right. So going back to the start of who else do we communicate with? So if you've got your thoughts, we'll see who comes up with it first. Those that know the answer, you're not allowed to answer. Let's
Geoff,
go ahead.
Geoff,
Yep.
just FYI, you're down to about 10-minute warning on an hour, buddy.
Okay. So yeah, throw it in the chat if you think you know who the answer, what the answer to the question is. And we'll see if Rodney picks them out.
No one's answering.
No?
Can I?
Who asked that?
Me, Rodney.
Oh.
No, Tyler, game administrators are already on the list.
Yep. We talked about game administration.
Okay, hold on. We got, so the first one to answer it correctly was Russ. Or no,
Yep.
I'm sorry, Scott Sr.
Scott
Says
Senior. All right.
ourselves.
Yep. We communicate with ourselves. This is one that obviously it took a little bit for us to think of, but talk to yourself. It's okay to talk to yourself. You should be talking to yourself before, during, and after the game. When you're talking to yourself, you want to be positive. You want to be helpful. Think of it as you're talking to a crewmate. If a crewmate's having a bad game and they're down in the dumps and they're, oh my God, I keep screwing up, what's going to be helpful? Is me piling on, yeah, man, you suck. Like, I should just take your flag. Oh, you're terrible. That's not going to help, because that person is a part of my team. We still need to get through the rest of the game together. If I pile onto them, it's going to make the game only worse. So you want to be positive. If there's that crewmate that's down, I'd be like, hey, it's all right. You get the next one. You just, boom, just get back in the rhythm. We're going to be good. We're going to get through this game. That's how you want to talk to yourself. Be calm when you talk to yourself. I know I do it. I know a lot of other officials do it, is they kind of talk through the action that they're seeing, where it might be, all right, I've got 57, they're blocking. That one's good. 72, it's getting dicey. Oh, nope, bad throw. Where if that's kind of going the calm way, where if you're just super excited, 57, you're good, 72, just going all over the place, you're not going to be seeing well enough to make a good call. So you want to be calm. Be honest. Be honest with yourself about your performance. And like I said, before, during, after the game. For before, I start my pregame for myself, usually on about Tuesday, if I've got a Friday game, Wednesday for a Saturday game. And if I'm the white hat, I'm doing my penalty announcements in the car, talking to myself, how I'm going to do it. As I'm driving to the game, I'm telling myself my mechanics, saying, okay, I'm going to be a line judge. First half, I'll be opposite the press box. I'm going to be on the receiver's restraining line, just going through, just boom, step by step, to help calm myself down so that when I step on the field, I've already thought about what I'm going to do. And then kind of along the same lines of the positivity, notice what you're saying to yourself. If you're getting down in the dumps on yourself, you can stop, acknowledge it, and say, okay, I'm feeling down. How can I fix this game? How can I fix this next play? And it's something that helps keep you engaged of, okay, I just need to get back in my pre-snap routine. I need to, boom, go through it. There's been times, I know Scott Campbell at our clinic, he kind of gave the talk of, he was more focused on what he was going to be eating. He was just hungry, just wanted to go eat. Obviously you want to be engaged, stay with the game, but there's been times honestly where I've thought about like food, what we're going to eat after the game, but I use that as incentive to help me get through the game. When you're working in Sacramento, it's 100 degrees and you're just struggling. It's, oh man, I've still got a quarter and a half to go. Kind of use that, like acknowledge it, like I'm struggling, but hey, if I work hard for this next quarter and a half, I get to go to my favorite post-game meal. I earned that. I'm going to be able to do it. That's going to be great. So kind of use that to kind of help get yourself through. Find little tricks for yourself. And then you're allowed to feel and think however you're feeling. There's been times where as a crew, you didn't have a good game, but you might have had some good calls and some good moments. You're allowed to have those. Just because the crew overall didn't have a good game doesn't mean that you didn't have good stuff that you can go through. And so you kind of want to be able to kind of look for those good things. It's not always only good, only bad. And then if you do have a bad call or a bad game, turn the page. You want to be able to snap out of it. Everybody has that different little term. Boom, just turn the page, get through it. The next play is always coming up. Get in your pre-game routine or pre-snap routine, and boom, just get right back in that, right back in that groove. And then lastly, before our little play,
Under 5, Geoff.
Yep. I was lucky enough to have Roscoe Meisenheimer from Pac-12 as a crew mentor for both Tate Consul and the Stars and Stripes Academy. And he really committed to us owning our position responsibility. And in that is communication. Own your communication before the season and during it. And then just commit to that good communication. If you do that, I guarantee you your games are going to be easier. You'll be able to get through it. So real quick with the last couple minutes, I'm going to show a play and then I'm going to call on a couple people and we'll kind of work through how we're going to talk, whether official to official, official to coach, or white hat to the crowd. So the action is going to be towards the end zone. So we had one official starting to rule touchback, one kind of starting to say, no, I've got him at the 2. So basically there's a momentum ruling. So let's see. I think I saw Mason. If you were the line judge, how would you communicate to your back judge that you've got a momentum ruling?
So I'd be coming in saying something along the lines of, I have a fumble at the 2-yard line or where the beanbag is with a recovery before the end zone. Beanbag is good before trying to go anywhere else.
Okay. Yeah, so you're kind of using kind of our rule speak, saying I've got the fumble. you could probably want to kind of throw in, hey, is he caught the fumble inside the 5, ball became dead in the end zone. And that would kind of tip off the back judge of, oh, we're looking at momentum. If you can kind of use those little terms from the rule, that'll kind of spark off of what you've got going on. Let's see, Bob Boyd, how would you tell a coach the ruling? Say the team that recovered, they're wondering why it's not at the 20. How would you tell the coach what you've got?
Well, still use a little bit of jargon, but not a whole lot. I'd say, we have a momentum rule. The ball was picked up at the 2. His momentum took him into the end zone. So we're going to bring it out and they're going to get the ball at the 2.
Perfect.
And just succinctly like that.
Perfect. Let's go, Mr. Jerry Springer. How would you make this announcement to the crowd?
I'd start off by giving the result of the play. The result of the play is a touchback. The ball was possessed at the 2-yard line into the end zone, and then I would say first down that way. I start off with the result of the play.
Okay. And so you kind of give that, you'd want to try to paint that picture a little bit.
Right.
Because the fan, there's some smart fans out there, but they may not know totally what's going on. And so, yeah, you want to kind of paint them that picture. Ed Hockley, he was kind of famous for that kind of elaborate announcements, sometimes a little bit too much, but you want to be able to paint that picture so that they know what's going on.
8 p.m., Geoff.
What's that?
It's 8 p.m., FYI.
Yep. I'm going to stop there. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Again, thank you guys for coming on and spending this hour with us. These are those moments where you can really start getting better. So thank you.